welcome to the Janus Project this week. As you can tell, we're trying out a brand new camera angle here and trying out a new microphone and a new video setup. So just kind of changing everything up. You'll notice a few of my decorations in the back have swapped around. I'll have an episode coming up soon, just kind of a pop culture thing. And so I want to talk to you guys about one single issue today. And you'll notice it is labeled on the video itself about 9 reasons why you should vote pro-life. And I want to point this out. I want to draw attention to it. I'm going to even bring up a few articles as we go through this discussion, because there's a growing number of Christians and a growing number of those people who call themselves Republicans, which I could care less what political party you are, but there's a growing number of so-called Christians, and I'm going to use that word so-called, who are saying, we believe that even though Joe Biden is very pro-abortion, we believe we should vote for Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump, because Joe Biden is the more consistent candidate when it comes to this, or the more in line with how the Bible would describe pro-life rather than just pro-birth. So what I want to do is I want to cover this issue. I want to go over as many of these topics as possible. I want to do it very, very quick. I'm going to link you to a few of the articles so you can follow up on some of what I talk about this morning, evening, wherever you are. And I want to also cover a few things. I want to, now that I've talked for a little bit of time, I also want to point out that I'm laying a trap for people. About the time you get to point number 6, I am just going to stop and I'm going to address the people who skipped straight to point 6. So if you want to see what I say to people on point 6, you can scroll down through on the bottom and find point number 6 and just watch that one. But I hope you don't, because there's a purpose I'm building to. And like I said, there's going to be kind of this shock as you suddenly shift getting to point 6, because the whole point is I'm going to put a very deliberately clickbaity type title on this one, because I want people to click on it. I want them to skip ahead to point number 6, and I want to give them a little bit of a lecture. And I want to draw attention to how little they care about this issue. Because if you skip over the whole video just to get to point 6, so you can prove someone wrong, or you haven't done your research and you just, I'll just go with the really good one. Okay, you need to take this topic more seriously. Okay? This is literally a topic of life and death. And so I just want to point some things out. I'm going to talk about who to vote for, because I think you should be told who is a good candidate and who isn't. And so I'm not going to shy away from telling you who I am voting for and who I think you should vote for if you want to be consistent with your pro-life values. And I want to draw attention to the fact that pro-birth is essential to pro-life. And so let's get talking. We're going to talk about the 9 reasons you need to vote pro-life, and why you need to vote for someone who is probably, note I say probably Republican or Libertarian in order to do that. All right, I don't know about the Libertarians. I've not looked at their stands, but I'm going to say you got to vote the Republican candidates this round, because again, pro-life, pro-birth, all those things are the issue that you should be concerned about. First of all, you cannot be pro-life if you are not pro-birth. Okay? I want you to think about this. There are people right now who are claiming to be Christian who are saying we are more than just pro-birth, we are pro-life. All right? So I'm going to read you an article here. This is from the Christian Post. And the Christian Post has an article they put out just recently, and they draw attention to all of these different apparently celebrity Christians. And as you go through their article, I just want to draw attention to some of the things. So here it says, we are pro-life evangelicals for Biden. Now, I don't care a lick what evangelical means. I don't consider myself an evangelical. Maybe some other people would. I just say, hey, I'm a Christian. If you want to slap a label on me, I line up most consistently with the Baptist way of looking at things. Okay? I have friends who fall into all sorts of spectrums on the Christian scale, but I don't care so much for evangelical. Like that, whatever. Okay? But I want you to, it's a term though, and so I want to read part of this article. Prominent evangelical leaders have just released a statement urging pro-life evangelicals to vote for Biden. Okay, these people are stupid. Just gonna say it, just right off the bat. They're stupid. I don't care how many doctorates they have. I don't care what magazine they used to edit for. If you are pro-life and you are supporting a candidate that supports abortion all the way up to and sometimes including birth, you're an idiot. Just gonna say it. I'm not gonna, pussyfoot around this thing. You need to pay attention and you need to take this seriously. The signers include John Huffman, board chair emeritus of Christianity Today; Richard Foster, best-selling author of Celebration of Discipline; Jerusha Duford, Billy Graham's granddaughter; Brenda Salter McNeil, author, speaker, and longtime IVCF leader. I don't care. John Perkins, founder of the Christian Community Development Association, and the two authors of this piece, and a number of former presidents of evangelical universities. The signers are diverse, and he goes through some of their things. Their statement acknowledges that as pro-life evangelicals, we disagree with the vice president and Democratic platform on the issue of abortion. But we believe, the statement continues, that a biblically shaped commitment to the sanctity of human life compels us to a consistent ethic of life that affirms sanctity of human life from beginning to end. You're in the wrong party if you believe that. There's a group of people who believe that we can kill you at birth if you were a botched abortion. There are a group of people who believe that at the end of your life, if you're no longer considered a person, because you are no longer characterized by higher brain function and all that, you could be put down, you could be euthanized. I'm telling you, that is more characteristic of the left than it is of the right, okay? So this idea of sanctity of human life from beginning to end, you're not finding that in the pro-choice community. All right. The statement points out that many problems that better politics could correct violate the sanctity of human life. Poverty, lack of health care, racism, and climate change all kill persons created in the image of God. They are all pro-life issues, according to this article. Stop right there. We'll get into those issues later on in this video. But the idea of poverty, the Bible says that the poor will be with you always. We do not live our lives in this social justice realm of saying we are here to eradicate poverty. We are not on this earth to eradicate poverty. We are here on this earth to be a blessing to others, to help one another. But I'm telling you, we cannot eradicate poverty. We do what we can to alleviate it. But again, it's not even the government's job. Okay? You look at the biblical definition for a government, its job is not to take care of poverty. It's not. That's the church's job. That's private citizens' job. It says lack of health care. There is no person. I live in California. I'm forced pretty much by law to be on their welfare state medical system. Okay? I don't make a lot of money, but I'm forced. And so this idea of lack of health care, show me a person who cannot walk into an emergency room and get treated. Yes, there might be a bill. But again, are you going to force doctors to do work at the equivalent of gunpoint and say, you have to provide this service for free or else? Then they say racism. I'm just going to stop you right here. This idea of racism being a pro-life issue or whatever. The reports that black people are being gunned down in the street and hunted and all of that, and it's racist, look at the statistics on it. White supremacy is barely a threat. It's barely a wrinkle in the surface of the pond of problems in our world.
But you wouldn't not acknowledge that there are some systemic issues.
Give me an example. Tell me what you think the most systemic racist issue is. What is it?
Well, I would say that because black people in most cases, in many cases, were descendants of slaves, that racism as an institution, that it just, a certain amount of it just exists.
2015? Give me the most blatant racist example you can come up with right now.
I think you could probably find evidence that in general, cops are more willing to shoot if the perpetrator is black.
What's your data
than white.
What's your basis for saying that? Last year...
Well, look, I know a lot of people would say, look what's going on in Chicago.
I know what they would say. Yeah. I'm talking about what the facts are. 965 people were shot by cops last year and killed. 4% of them were white cops shooting unarmed blacks. In Chicago in 2011, 21 people were shot and killed by cops. In 2015, there were 7. In Chicago, which is a third black, a third white, and a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides are black on black. About 40 per month, almost 500 per year last year in Chicago, and 75% of them are unsolved. Where is the Black Lives Matter on that? The idea that a racist white cop shooting unarmed black people is a peril to black people is BS. It's complete and total BS. And the reason for these so-called activists saying this is the assumption that racism remains a major problem in America. The media, CNN, especially MSNBC, runs down whenever a black cop shoots somebody, and it's some march on Washington. It's ridiculous. Black people, half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year there were 14,000 homicides. Not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Half of them were black, 96% of them black on black of that 7,000. Where's the Black Lives Matter people on that?
Okay? You search white supremacy, you find very, very few instances of white supremacy occurring. Okay? If you look at the statistics of cops shooting black people, unarmed black people, the statistics are supremely low compared to pretty much every other reason for people being killed. So this idea that racism is a more important issue than abortion, it's not. Unless you are tying it in with the idea that more black people are aborted than any other group, because Margaret Sanger was a racist who wanted to eradicate the black community. So in that point, maybe I'd agree if that's where you're going to go with it, but that's not where they're going. And then it also says climate change. Okay? Give me some statistics. Show me where climate change has killed more people than abortion has. Poverty and disease as we know it, as we know how to prevent it, kills millions every year. The World Food Program estimates that by the end of 2020, 265 million people around the world could be pushed to the brink of starvation. Then they go on talking about some of these things that Trump has eradicated that could potentially lead to more poverty and more death. We're going to get into it in some of the future points of this video. But I want to point out that it's bad governments that are responsible for these deaths. Okay? It's not our job to fix everything. And if you're going to vote for these government officials who are responsible for a lot of these bad governments being in place, and they keep sending money and resources to these bad governments, what do you expect to keep happening? Joe Biden has been in politics for almost 47 years. He hasn't solved these problems. Why on earth are you giving him another 4? That doesn't make any sense. All right? And so this idea that to be pro-life is more than just being pro-birth. You cannot be pro-life if you are not pro-birth. That's point number 1. Point number 2, you can't be pro-life while being pro-socialism or communism. I'm going to throw a few statistics at you. I don't want to take too much time on this point. You can look them up on your own. Communism, okay? Now, just so you understand, socialism is kind of that halfway point between like capitalism and such and communism, okay? That it goes kind of a capitalist system, and it slowly waters down with socialism, where the government kind of takes more and more control of things, and eventually it evolves into this fairyland of communism where there is no state, everybody shares everything, and it's all great. Again, go back to some of our systematic theology for non-Christians if you want some explanations here. Human nature is such that humans are evil, and that will never happen because human nature is so evil. Humans will continue to acquire and gain, and this idea of eradicating the government, it doesn't work, okay? So anarchy and no government and just Hakuna Matata, that is a pipe dream. However, this idea of communism as you see it in the world today, communism as you see it in the world today is really just like, high-level socialism. Okay, this idea of the government is just like fully in control of all the means of production, all of that good stuff. Communism is one of the most violent killers in our world today. We should be doing everything in our power to strip power away from these government groups, but you see Joe Biden buddying up to China and all these other groups. I want to show you a few of the statistics really quick on what communism has done. And so if you're pro-socialism and if you're pro-communism, you are not pro-life, okay? Communism has killed more than pretty much anything else. Professor Stephen Kotkin, I don't know how to say his name properly. He estimated that between 1917 and 2017, communism killed 65 million people. Now, those statistics might be wrong. We don't know what's actually going on. But upwards of 65 million people, Okay, the Black Book of Communism claims a higher amount, claims that over 94 million people have been killed. This is done by executions. It's done by man-made hunger. We'll talk about that in just a sec. It's done by famine. It's done by war. It's done by deportations and forced labor. Okay, you want a good book on the subject? I've got a book on my shelf back here. It might be buried underneath. Yeah, buried under this book. The Gulag Archipelago is a 3-volume set that goes into all of the details of basically the rise of Soviet communism. And it just traces the imprisonments and the executions and the malnourishment and all of that. Just if you want to know what socialism's all about, okay? Communism is the like pipe dream end result, but we call it communism. It really should be more of end stage socialism. But again, this idea of deportations, forced labor, all of those things. People die in the gulags all the time, or at least they did back in the Soviet Union. Nowadays, if you oppose Vladimir Putin, yeah, if you Putin, I was like, what's his first name? If you oppose Putin, you die, random deaths. You know, like, oops, I fell out of a window. Oops, I got, radiation and it killed me. There's all sorts of stuff like that. Communists are the most brutal and the most deadly people. Okay? There's a year-long famine that was caused in the Ukraine, a man-made famine, because they basically pulled all of the trained laborers out and replaced them with people who really didn't know what they were doing. And those people who were left behind weren't really allowed to keep their fields the way they were. Like, you gave all your food to the state. All right, it was called the Holodomor. All right, it took place in the Ukraine. It stands for to kill by starvation. That's more or less a loose translation. In the Holodomor, it saw deaths in a peacetime because of a man-made famine, and they said between 3 and 12 million people died in 1 year in the Ukraine. They finally kind of settled on potentially 3.5 million. This isn't a place that had tons of food, tons and tons of food, but they were shipping it all away. They were just not treating it properly, and 3.5 to 12 million people died as a result of the Holodomor, to the point where people were having to put up banners that basically said, "To eat your own children is a barbaric act." It's monstrous. But this is the results of what Soviet communism did. And yet there were newspapers in the United States during that time that this took place back in the early 1900s. There were newspapers who took place, and they were saying, no, it's just it's fake. It isn't really happening. So you cannot be pro-communism, pro-socialism, pro these programs, and be pro-life. Okay? Because those are the most deadly programs imaginable. Okay? I'm just going to pause and say this. As you deal with the issue, the Bible says clearly, if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. So what's that say about people who say, I'm just not going to work. I'm just going to collect a check all the time. I'm not saying everyone who's on food stamps is doing that. I'm not saying everyone on welfare is doing that. But there's a good group of people who are. Third point. You are not taking this seriously enough. If you are pro-life, if you are pro-birth, but you believe that you can vote for a pro-abortion candidate because they have good economic or good environmental or good whatever other policy you want to throw in there, you are not taking this life and death situation seriously enough. Okay? Like I said, communism and big government programs like socialism, where they end up, they kill more people than global warming is going to kill. Okay? The number of people killed by abortion is more than the environmental things. And we are not going to solve the poverty issue. It's not possible. Okay? You can't change mankind's human nature. All right? It's a gospel issue. We've got to get into that later on. But these things, you can just kind of hand wave them and say, oh, well, I mean, we can change this later. No, that's not how this works. People are dying. It's estimated that 9,000 people a day die by abortion. 9,000 people a day die by abortion. How come that's not a ticker on the news every day like COVID is? So if you are pro-life, but you are going to vote for Biden or someone else because, hey, they may be pro-abortion, but I really like this policy, you are not taking it seriously enough. Point number four. Point number four. If you refuse to vote for Trump because he's just a meanie old grumpy pants, you must understand that as far as the pro-life means, he has done more to defend life than anyone else. And you hate him because he's mean. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you feel that way. But the unquestionable candidate who is pro-life, who has done more to defend life, I don't even care what he really believes. I care about what his actions are. But the candidate who has done more to defend the cause of pro-life things, I don't care if he's the biggest jerk in the world, he's defending life. And he has the record to prove it. Whereas Biden and Harris don't. You have a pro-life president, a pro-life vice president. You could potentially have a pro-life court. You have pro-life legislators. You need to get the pro-life cause going. And if you are saying, you know what, but there's other reasons. Trump has ended wars. He's the first president in decades that we haven't been involved in constant wars. That's pretty good. He's doing what he can to stop the random drug traffic raid things that just, oh, you've got like a pinch of marijuana, let's just invade your house. You upset about what happened to Breonna Taylor and all of that stuff? Okay? What if we said, we're not going to just do random raids and we're not just going to hold you in jail for just random things? He's releasing people. He's trying to get people freed for non-violent crimes. So if you want to make a case for someone who's very pro-life, pro-freedom, pro-liberty, dare I say, pro-black, you are not going to find a better candidate than Trump. And if you say, but he refused, he said sure in the debate, he refused to condemn white supremacy. Okay, go do some research. Look at the white supremacist groups that are causing trouble. Are any of them burning down cities right now? Because it's Antifa who's doing that. They're not a white supremacist group unless, well, they kind of are, but not really. And so this idea that, oh, Trump refuses to condemn white supremacists, only he's done it repeatedly through the years. So go do your research. Fifth reason, you can't be pro-life and pro-big government. I have a simple point here. When the Bible lays out how you are supposed to care for others, it's talking about caring for those in your family. In fact, let me put it this way. The Bible calls a widow someone who's about 75 years old, I believe. It might be 65. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. It says, if you have a widow, it says churches are responsible for taking care of widows who are widows indeed. And then it goes on to define what a widow indeed is. And simply put, a widow indeed is a person, a woman who has lost her husband. She's about 65 years old, I believe is the number, maybe 75. And she does not have any living male younger relatives, like nephews or sons. And it says, if she has younger nephews or sons, they need to take care of her. And if they refuse to take care of her, they're to be kicked out of the church and to be treated like a heretic, which is a pretty stiff punishment. And I've known people who did not take care of their mother. They refused. And so a church had to take over it, and the church was draining its resources, taking care of someone's mom because they refused to. Take care of your parents. That's it. That's the biblical mandate. Take care of your parents. Now, if you have to put them in a hospice, or if you have to put them in a folks' home, you're responsible for taking care of that. That's not the government's job. So we can talk about the poverty issues and all of those other things. You're supposed to take care of your parents. And if there's no one to take care of your parents, hopefully your parents have been faithful to a local church so the local church can take care of them. If they have no one there, then communities should take care of each other. I'm part of a church and I've been part of schools, and I've been part of other churches. And when I knew there was a need that was a true need, I gave money to help those people, and I didn't have a ton myself. But there are times where I have money and someone else doesn't, and so I give money to them. And you know what happens when I don't have money and they do? They give money to me. I'm supported by the kindness of people. And I've had people pay for my tooth repair. I've had people pay for my tires. I've had people give me vehicles. And I think if you let people know your needs, and you let people know you were working, because it's your responsibility to work, and you let people know there was no other way for you to get those needs met, you stand back and you find out that you don't need the government to do it. It should be something that is done in the community. You got families taking care of each other, churches taking care of each other, communities taking care of each other. You don't need the big government passing out checks. Just think about how much more money you'd have if you didn't have to pay all those taxes to the government so they can turn around and give it to random people they don't know. You know why it's important that you give within your own community? Because you know those people. And you know that guy's not going to wander over and spend it all on drugs. You know that's a guy who's really down on his luck. That's a guy right there who wants to do what's right, and he just had a bad break. I'm going to give him some money. Hey, there's a guy who doesn't have a vehicle, but man, you know what? He needs one. I'll give him a car. And you got people who do that. Believe it or not, you got people who do that. And I think we need more of it. You don't need the government to step in and do this. You got missionary organizations, you got community groups who are reaching out and dealing with poverty, dealing with starvation. It does not need to be a big government thing. In fact, big government throughout history has only been good for one thing: killing people. Just what they're good at. Not to mention the fact is, you look at the biblical view of a government, has nothing to do with anything that we pretty much have our government doing right now. We could slim our government down. It doesn't need to be involved in education. It doesn't need to be involved in welfare programs. It doesn't need to be involved in much thing. I think if you have a welfare program run by your government, it should be a county thing. It should be a town thing. It doesn't even need to be a state thing. These are not well done by the government, okay? I mean, governments don't even run post offices well. You think they're going to run a food bank well? No. Let the churches, let the communities come together as people. But no, we're so divided. And so when you talk about this idea of being pro-life, I don't see how you can be big government. Because statistically speaking, really the only thing big government's good at is killing people, subjugating people, crushing them under the heel. Point number 6. If you clicked all the way to this point, do you really care about this issue? I've covered 5 points leading up to this one, and you fast forwarded all the way to this. Why? When we talk about abortion, we talk about pro-life and pro-death and pro-choice and pro-forced birth and all of those things. These are labels, but have you actually stopped to do some thinking on your own? Or are you just looking at clickbait going, oh, you know what? Oh, this is going to be a zinger I can nail someone with. Share the whole video. Encourage them to watch the whole thing. It's worth the 45 minutes. It's worth the half hour. There are reasons why pro-life means so much more than anti-abortion. But it starts there. So please go back to point 1. To be pro-life, you have got to be pro-birth. It's a life and death issue. Just go back. Point number 7. Why I'm voting for the right, why I'm pro-life and I can't support Biden is because the left doesn't give. I want to read part of this article. The article's titled, Republicans give more to charity than Democrats, but there's a bigger story here. All right. The article, it's put out by the Nonprofit Quarterly, and it was published in 2018. But it says the political differences between Republicans and Democrats don't play out solely at the ballot box. They also predict how likely people are to donate to charity. This finding from a newly published research project reflects a key difference, one tied to political affiliation, about how our nation should take on critical social issues like homelessness, poverty, and healthcare. Just a note here. You want to look at a government who does a really terrible job of taking care of the homeless. Take a look at places like San Francisco and Los Angeles and San Diego. Look at some of those cities. There's a great video on Reason. It's a YouTube channel. There was a guy who started trying to put together mini houses for the homeless. I think it was down in LA. And the government actually stepped in and said, no, you can't be doing that. Now, you could have the nasty tent cities who are overflowing with filth, where people are cutting into each other's tents to steal stuff. But no, you can have that, but you can't have a little mini house that takes up about as much space. No. That's not appropriate. It takes up sidewalk space. He even offered to like buy a parking lot and put all these houses. Oh, no, you can't do that. When big government gets involved, it makes things worse. I just want to point that out. Okay? Now, it says this. Using voting and IRS data for the residents of 3,000 counties across the nation, the 4-professor research team found, according to the New York Times, that counties, which are overwhelmingly Republican, report higher charitable contributions than Democrat-dominated counties, although giving in blue counties is often bolstered by a combination of charitable donations and higher taxes. But as red or blue counties become more politically competitive, charitable giving tends to fall. The full study is recently published on the Nonprofit and Voluntary Sector Quarterly. Basically, it's going in that Republicans give more, but Democrats are taxed more. So, that kind of takes up the place of it, right? Which it might. But the fact is, we've already kind of established government stinks at doing this charity stuff. They really do. Private organizations have been doing it better for a long time. So why on earth are we giving more and more money to these organizations? And why are you trusting the left to be charitable? Let me point this out. Charity is not taking someone else's money and giving it away. Charity is reaching into your own pocket and giving away what you have, even if it hurts. And so I really don't care about these big politicians who have millions of dollars and they're like, oh, I gave away my 1,000. Oh, be thankful. I don't care. I don't care what you give. But don't look at me and be like, you should feel bad. You should give more. I'll give what I want to give, thanks. And I probably give more proportionally than you do. I just, the left doesn't give. And they find ways around the taxes also. Point number 8. Actions speak louder than vague platitudes. Here's the thing. Remember I said earlier in the video, I said Joe Biden's been in politics for like 47 years. That's Senate, that's vice president, that's all these things. How come he hasn't solved these problems in all that time? How come he hasn't solved the climate issue? How come he hasn't solved all these poverty issues? How come the homeless crisis is terrible in like the highly taxed places of California? They say they care, but by their actions they show they don't. Here's the point. Don't believe what they say. Believe what they do. I've actually seen people who talk about, well, Trump may, support pro-life things, but he doesn't actually believe it. Okay, like I said, I don't care what they believe. That's one of the reasons I had a hard time supporting Trump right off the bat, because he was untested. I didn't know where he stood. But you don't believe what they say, you believe what they do. And you look at Trump's stopping of wars, you look at him saying, we're not going to support people who force sterilization or who promote abortion. We're going to try to, repeal funding in these. Those are all ways to save life. It's ridiculously good. And I'll just point this out. This is a controversial statement. But you want to look at one of the best technologies for the environment? It's nuclear power. How come you don't see people clamoring for that? I'm just saying. You've got these platitudes. You've got these empty sayings. But you've got to step back and say, what are they doing? Point number 9. Just because someone's going to break the law doesn't mean we should get rid of it or even that we should keep it. It has no bearing on it whatsoever. Here's a for instance. We have laws against speeding. People still speed. Does that mean we should get rid of the speeding laws? We have laws against running a stop sign or running a red light. People do it anyway. Does that mean we should get rid of the law? We have laws against murder and people go out and commit murder. Does that mean we should get rid of the law? Okay. So just because someone's going to go out and break the law, it has no bearing whatsoever on whether the law is good or bad. The idea that people are going to go out and break the law has absolutely no bearing on whether the law works or is good or whatever. It's just not even a data point. So I've seen one of the things people say is they're like, if you get rid of Roe v. Wade, if you get rid of that court case, people are going to go still have abortions anyway. They're going to be just as prevalent. They're just going to be more dangerous. Okay. First of all, no, they won't. Statistically speaking, prove it. Prove there's going to be an equal number of people going out and getting abortions when the law is overturned. I don't think you're going to see a 15-year-old going out and getting an abortion in an alleyway. I think what you should see is if someone is pregnant, you don't browbeat them. You don't condemn them. You say, you know what? You made a mistake. You sinned. Okay? Let's just call it what it is. You sinned. But you know what? A lot of other people sin and they don't get caught. We're going to work through this. We're going to see this child delivered. We're going to take care of this kid. And that's one of the main reasons people have abortion. They're like, I can't afford it. I'm not ready for a kid. Oh, I don't have my spouse or my partner. They're not here to raise it. I mean, all those reasons. Sometimes it's just selfishness. But you got all these reasons, and they say, well, I'm just going to go have an abortion. It's easy. And so I think if you don't have Planned Parenthoods all over the place, you don't have people going in and going, oh. It's the same reason why they make cigarettes harder and harder to buy, to hopefully discourage people from doing them. And so when we look at this idea of abortion, and they're like, well, abortion's just going to be as prevalent. It's just going to be more dangerous. No, it won't. It won't be as prevalent. It'll be a little bit more dangerous. But again, I go back to a previous point I made in another video on this subject. It's not our problem if people are going to break the law. The government's job is not to provide everything you need. It is to protect you. Protect you from evildoers. Okay? That's the purpose of government. To protect you from evildoers. In the American system, it is there to protect our natural rights. If you don't know what natural rights are, do a little bit of research and you'll find out that things like having money, having healthcare, all of that those aren't natural rights. They're just not. The government is not supposed to be like a hyper-permissive father who just gives you whatever you want. It's there to be a terror to evil works. So if you commit a murder, there should be a penalty for it. And if the government's not going to do the penalty, then there are times where your own actions come back and kill you. Look at a lot of people who've been shot by cops lately. Look at their actions and look at the death that they deserved. And look what happened. The government refused to do its job, and the world had a way of catching up with them. It's a terrible thing. But if the government had taken care of it properly, we wouldn't have had to deal with a lot of the stuff we're dealing with in our culture right now. It's just the way it is. Now, another point I see is there are a lot of people who are like, you need to keep abortions available because there are times where the mother needs that abortion for health reasons. Again, I admit, it is the Association of ProLife Obstetricians and Gynecologists, so that they're a pro-life organization. But they point this out. They say abortions to save the life of a mother. That's the tagline. It is a misleading terminology, and one never aborts. Rather, one treats both patients. For instance, prematurely delivering a baby may be the option if the mother is gravely ill. So the point that they're making in that study is when you look at it, this idea that you must save the baby for the life of the mother, it's almost never the case where the abortion is necessary for a medical reason. It is almost never the case where you must terminate the pregnancy. Okay? I can think of 2 situations where you potentially would have to terminate the life of the child. Let's just say it, you killed the child. There are 2 instances I can think of where that situation might occur. One is if the mother has cancer and they cannot radiate the mother without hurting the baby. Okay? That's one situation. The other is what's called an ectopic pregnancy. In an ectopic pregnancy, what happens is the baby does not deposit itself in the uterine wall like it's supposed to. It goes up the tubes a little ways and gets stuck up there. Leads to a lot of bleeding, leads to a lot of dangerous situations. Bioethicists pretty much universally say it's okay to take the baby's life to save the mom in that case. I still don't personally. But those are two instances I can think of where the mother's life may genuinely be at risk if this pregnancy keeps going. Ectopic pregnancies are extremely rare. Also, the body tends to take care of it itself. So when they're in the wrong location, the body tends to sort things out. Okay? In that case, I would say let's see if you can do a surgery to get that baby back down in a spot where it can live. And if it doesn't, you have tried. But I do not support abortion in any situation. But those are the two situations I can think of where the mother's life is genuinely at risk. But again, according to the Association of ProLife Obstetricians and Gynecologists, it says this: according to them, the cases where it's actually life and death are so small as to not even make a statistical impact. It varies based on county, country, tech level, etc. And so if you're in an area with way better technology, guess what? The chances of you having a live birth that is viable is way higher. One doctor commented, said, during my time at Albany Medical Center, I managed hundreds of such cases. Okay? And she says, I handled these by terminating the pregnancy to save the mother's life. In all of those cases, the number of unborn children that I had to deliberately kill was 0. So statistically speaking, abortions to save the life of the mother are statistically 0. Yes, they still happen. Yes, there are rare cases, but they are exactly that, rare. Most other instances where people scream for an abortion are because they are ashamed of themselves. They got themselves into a situation they don't want to have a baby. Or financially, they're doing things that, I can't afford a baby right now. Again, look previously in the video for some solutions to that issue. But if you're ashamed and you decide it's better to cover up and have the baby aborted than just go forward with the baby, give the baby up for adoption. Do not kill that child. Remember, every abortion costs a life. Every single abortion results in the end of a life. So you may be doing this to save the life of a mother, but you are still taking a life no matter what. So you need to take this very carefully and very seriously. And if you support a candidate who is pro-choice, they are pro-abortion, you need to think very carefully about what your vote is actually causing. You are not helping to stifle the flow of evil. You are actually helping to say, you know what? Yes, I approve. You know what? When I vote for Donald Trump, in a way, I'm putting my approval on his arrogance. I'm putting my approval on his pride. I don't like that, but I don't have a choice. Because if it's voting for him or voting for Biden, there's no question at all. Donald Trump is pro-life. He's pro-birth. He's got my vote. No doubt about it. Now, if he changes his stand on pro-life and he goes the way of other politicians, he's lost my support. It's done. I would rather not vote than vote for someone who's not pro-life. I remember when I was a kid, I remember hearing my pastor talking about some governor, I think it was Governor Benson in New Hampshire. And I was like, well, I mean, he's got this great economic policy. We should vote for him for this. And I remember looking, I was like, he's a louse. I can't vote for him. And I voted Democrat because the Democrat actually had a better stand on a lot of things than the Republican. And I said, you know what, that guy over there, and I don't care what his economic policy is. I'm not pro big government. I'm not pro socialist, all that. But you know what? If you are anti-abortion and you're not sleeping around and doing all these other things, I'm like, I'm going to go with you. Guys, thank you for tuning in to this special episode of the Janus Project. We've looked through 9 reasons why I don't think you can vote for Biden. Vote for who you will, but I don't think you can justify voting for Biden if you are pro-life. We looked through 9 reasons, and they all build on each other. All right, so if you cue into one of them and you're like, that doesn't make any sense, look at the previous points. Guys, I work hard to put these videos together. I'd appreciate it if you share them. I'd appreciate it if you leave a comment. If you've got questions, I'd love to take them. Please click that subscribe button, click that like button. I'd like to get the word out about these videos. And I promise we're almost done with the political stuff. All right, I got like one more political one planned. But again, these still tie into the biblical view of life, biblical view of government, biblical view of choices that you need to make. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, like I said, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll reply to them. Hope you guys are having a good day, and I will see you next time on the Janus Project.